This guy is apparently an insider. He worked inside of the game industry for a couple of years, and he went to California and exposed every single thing from within. Now, as we already know, Blizzard Entertainment is located right there. So, I don't know if he has any experience with Blizzard. Regardless, it doesn't really matter because all of these companies are built on the same apparatus. They just cycle the same developers, they cycle the same slop, and that's why we're seeing games like Dragonflight in World of Warcraft and Concord pretty much doing the same, just rotting and dying.
So, it's been 5 years since
I know recommended the video, but I ain't no snitch.
Moved to the
based.
US. And that's what ended up leading me to work at Respawn
do we have captions?
on
Oh,
the
yeah,
Star
we do.
Wars Jedi Survivor title. And then shortly after that, I ended up working at Naughty Dog on The Last of Us.
Naughty Dogs are the one who make the zombie game. I forgot how it's called. The second one, which was super woke. The first one was actually good. The second one was the most wokest crap I've ever seen in my life. The most DEI millennial coded game on planet Earth. I forgot how it's called.
Franchise, and I am so
The Last of
grateful
Us?
to both those teams. You know, I'm not gonna ever say a bad word about the people who pulled me up, and I got to do great things with. But I have definitely seen over the 4+ years I've been here now, there is some crazy issues happening in the West Coast game development industry. And I have yet to see someone formalize some of the points that I'm thinking in my head right now. And so what I could do is I could do one of my old YouTube videos that has crazy editing and I spend time trying to match the music and all the visuals. But it's such a sensitive subject that I don't think that it's going to really make sense for me to do it that way. So instead, what I want to do is I want to just talk for a minute to explain the complexity of the problem. And I don't even really know what I'm going to name this because it's so unique to California that I guess it can only really be called the California game dev problem.
Nice camera angle, but is
So
the camera
we can
mounted
probably
like 30
all
centimeters
agree
outside the car?
Video
I never
games
thought of it.
costing $200-300 million is
Yeah.
outrageous.
Oh, finally someone saying it. Holy crap, dude. I've been waiting for people to catch that notion. It's like, it's so crazy. Guys, don't you think that like video games costs have became exponentially higher in like the past years? And like the past decade, right? It's like making a game used to cost so dirt cheap compared to what you got. And nowadays, you don't even have physical CDs anymore. They're about to abolish that. So how video games cost so much? And I know that putting like famous people inside of PVC cubes is now the standard, and I guess they take half of the company funding or something. But at this point, it's probably just a giant money laundering scheme. Like, let's be honest, it shouldn't be that high. You shouldn't have this many people working on a game unless they're all like, how do I say it? Like singular brain cell units that you need to combine them all together to create a coherent person. And if that's the case, just pay them peanuts. I don't care. Every single employee you have needs to bring his game on. If you're paying someone full salary, he needs to work. And we've seen a huge trend, especially inside of Microsoft, which by the way owns Blizzard, where a lot of people are there just to get paid and do nothing. We've seen that a lot. How many shorts have we seen by now of, mostly female, I gotta admit, that do absolutely nothing except working for like 1 hour, go eat a salad, work for 2 hours, go to sleep, work for 1 more hour, and then go home. We've seen so many of these by now, and I think that these people should be instantaneously let go. If you don't want to work on a game, if you don't want to be a part of something good, get out. That's my opinion of it. Yeah, I'm fine with video games finally rising in price after 40 years. Hell no. They shouldn't rise in price. Yeah, it's okay. They need to be $60. That like prices should have gone down. They shouldn't go up unless the quality went up, but the quality actually exponentially went downward to the sewers. Like games aren't even optimized anymore. So no, I completely disagree on that.
It shouldn't be costing that much to make a game. And I've already made a video explaining how mid-tier games are basically getting wiped out in the US because of like growing costs, but little movement on sales. In the comments, developers cost too much, teams are too big, games are taking too long, salaries are too high, and every single one of those points I completely agree with. Like, objectively, those things are all true. So it kind of looks like the problem is payroll. But if you follow that, if it was just salaries that were the problem, then games would be dramatically better. And they're not. They're just, more expensive. There were great games that were a lot cheaper in the past. I know that when people hear high salaries, they picture the developers getting mad rich, like having crazy success, buying their second swimming pool. But that's not what's happening at all. A lot of that money, it just never reaches the work. It gets absorbed before the work even begins. Like, all that cash isn't really flowing into the game devs. Not really. It's flowing through them into the cost of living near the game studio. And almost all the major studios are trying to pull back on remote work. Places like LA, Santa Monica, San Francisco, San Diego, other West Coast cities too, like Vancouver, Seattle. These studios are in some of the most expensive places on earth. And like I said, they're pulling back on remote work. So they don't really want people to be in less affordable places while they work there. And the salaries got to rise up to withstand that. And everything rises with that. So, rent or mortgage, that's like many thousands a month. Then you got utilities, groceries. And then, look at it this way. The grocery stores, they got to raise their prices because the grocery store employees also need to live in these expensive places. And so everything goes up because of that. And then, then you got insurance, health insurances. If you got kids, then the childcare, in some cases, like rivals the rent. It's like similar. And then transportation. And then my favorite one, taxes. So when like salaries rise, they're not just like rising into like free empty space. They're rising into a system that's like already pulling money from every direction. And there's so far been very little to slow it down because housing supply is suppressed, and that's forcing the prices to get even higher than they already are. And then, building and construction, if you want to make new places to accommodate for more people, that has crazy hurdles because of crazy policies that I still don't really understand. And all of this is just causing the prices to just get stupid. And so game developer salaries just rise to match that.
So basically you create fake reasons to get more money out of people and companies has to pay their employees more. Got it. Okay, sounds right. Sounds about right. But yeah, like GB, I see you in the chat trying to rage bait. Like, GTA 6 is worth $100. How do you know that? The game isn't out. Like, what are you going off a prayer? Like, you're guessing? Like, how do you know it's worth $100? Wait until the game comes out and then tell me if it's worth $100. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. And right now, every single indicator is that the game is going to be woke DEI slop. So, like, how can you... I'm not gonna pay $100 for that. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. I'll wait for a discount or, like, a massive discount or something if I ever purchase it at all.
And they're just being absorbed by, like, baseline survival costs, So that's basically why games are getting crazy, crazy, crazy expensive. It's just... It has to be that way or people couldn't afford to live. So you might even be surprised to hear that a lot of game devs that work on some of the biggest games, like massive, massive games that, win game awards for Game of the Year and, they go on to have international acclaim. The developers behind that often are living like paycheck to paycheck.
But how much Bobby's earning? Damn, have you thought about that? I mean, it's so funny that developers get basically nothing, and Bobby gets another yacht. I think that's the problem. I wonder why he's kind of skipping over that, but maybe I'll talk about it a little bit later.
And the game budget is flowing through the developers, like I said before, but it's just like settling in the environment around them. It's not really going towards them. So usually it's going to someone. It's going to someone. And usually
Yes.
that's a landlord or a real estate investment trust or like a private equity firm that just operates as a corporate landlord. This is where it gets worse.
So corporate
because
greed.
This doesn't really just make games expensive. Like, yeah, it makes it pricey, but it totally distorts game development. So when a game costs that much, you don't really get the luxury of experimentation in the same way. Like, you don't get to chase the strange ideas for too long, and you don't get to throw away work like you used to, because like every decision has a really big price.
Yes.
And if you were on that team, you wouldn't want to risk it either. Like, games, basically, they don't get to be creative like they used to be. That's a luxury. They're forced to work, like stabilize. And so I feel like that's the part that people miss and they don't really talk about very much. They talk about games, yeah, really expensive, but it's not just expense. Expensive games don't just cost more. They lose all their options. So an example would be if you had a small team and they build a system and it doesn't quite work, they can throw it away. It's painful, sure, but it's possible. Whereas if a large team, a massive studio builds a system and for whatever reason it gets past the blockout stage and the exploration stage and they finally utilize it with, you know, all the assets and it's not quite working, that decision already has cost like art, animation, like all the engineers coding, the UI, maybe the production schedules were moved around for this, like all the approval processes with expensive meetings with all these execs and whatever. Like, say that it gets to that point, like that's many millions to get to that point. So you can't just say the word like, all right, yeah, let's just change the idea, it's not working, this is not making the game better. Like,
Yes.
That's not a normal statement anymore. That statement is like you're setting fire to a mountain of cash.
Exactly what happened with New World. Exactly what happened with New World 1-to-1. New World started as a PvP based MMO, and at some point, really close to the finish line actually, they've realized that PvP based MMOs are garbage and they will never work, and they tried to pivot to PvE. That went horribly. And even after they actually fixed the game, and I heard from many people that the last patch was actually a pretty good PvE experience, it didn't matter. The game already had such bad reputation, it died. And that's, you know, unfortunate, because we could have had another MMORPG we may have loved and played for a long time, but no. Another MMORPG back to the graveyard with all the other folks. It's just sad to see. And this is something that I also always mention whenever I speak about this topic. The cost of being wrong is very, very steep. And that's why we're not seeing anything creative anymore. That's why we're seeing all them companies chasing the same trend over and over again. It happened with MOBA games. It happened with a Battle Royale craze. Now it's happening with extraction shooters. The next thing will pop and everyone will be on it. Nobody's making something new. It's like one game is shattering the glass ceiling, and every other company just follows it. That's what we have nowadays, and it's so unfortunate because you know what's even like more laughable than this? It's the fact that you put such idiots in charge that tanks the money to the ground. It's like the person who called Riot Games fighting game 2XKO. Like, how can you agree to this? Who was the degen who actually said, "Oh, let's call a very, very like, how do you say that? Like, very popular franchise in a weird, contrived name that makes no sense." Like, who thought that was a good idea? You could have called it like Fighters of Runeterra or something like that, and everyone would be like, damn, that's crazy. Who called it 2XKO? It's so stupid. And also you have people in charge of like Concord, which I think tanked like $400 million for Sony, and that's why they upped the prices of their next gen consoles. It just, what can you do, man? It's like, it's stupid. And of course, the the person who was responsible for Dragonflight, who thought an expansion about androgynous furry dragons is a good thing for marketing. It's also stupid. Yeah, that's why we're about to get Guild Wars 3, the High Guard MMO. Exactly. Like, the problem is companies that really just put incompetent people in charge. That is the main problem. Like, that's the crux of the issue. If you put someone competent in charge, he will give you a great product. But whenever you put Labubu millennials and wine moms at the top, it will never end well for you.
So what happens is you just stop changing things.
Yeah, oh, sorry, wrote something, sorry. Yeah, Blizzard pays their employees after game sales well regardless of a job title or contribution, but then Bobby stopped that practice and only rewarded people who made that the thing that is selling. So he just paid like the marketing team? I mean, I don't know. Oh, it's written in the book? Really? I never heard of that. But since Gallowix, Trade Prince Gallowix is pretty much Bobby Kotick self-insert, I agree. I think that happened. It sounds reasonable to me.
Like, not because they're right, but because it's just really expensive to challenge like that movement now, that momentum that you've built. And so sometimes the bad decisions in the game just don't get fixed at all. They get carried, and just people just keep building on it or trying to make it work or like forcing it or bending it, because it's the epitome of a sunk cost fallacy. You poured all your time into it, and now you gotta try and make it work. Something I missed before I started editing this is that modern games are incredibly complicated to make. That means fewer people have the skills needed to do certain jobs at a high level. The problem is that many of those like very senior developers
I thought video games became increasingly easier to do. I think that's false. I don't think that's right. But maybe it depends on like the engine and stuff. But I know for a fact you have like a lot of mono singular developer. I said like mono twice, it's the same thing. Like you have a lot of single developers making game nowadays. But to be fair, it is on like Unity and Unreal Engine, which I guess is exponentially easier. But you can create some great stuff with that. So maybe if you're building your own engine, that is true. But I think with Unreal Engine and stuff, a lot more people have practiced that. And I think as like we grow as a society, more and more people are into tech nowadays. So back in the day, finding someone who actually knows how to code was very difficult. Today, everyone's coding. Like everyone, like how many of you guys know someone that is an engineer? I think plenty of you do. I know I do. And I know many other people who has as well. Like it just became kind of normality, right? Because we grew up with the internet and all of that in mind. So more and more people are getting into the business. And you actually have a lot of inflation. Because you have a lot of people who wants to work in the game industry, and there's just no more jobs. And we heard about it a lot. All the jobs are being taken.
eventually just have enough of California and they leave. They want to settle down, they want to buy a house, raise a family, and they definitely want to stop paying the $3,000 to $4,000 a month in rent. So they move to cheaper states and smaller game studios. And if you want them back, it takes a very expensive compensation.
It's not all freelance, no.
And the brain drain isn't just leaving the state, it's also leaving the industry altogether. Engineers and programmers that work in games can often, they just can make 2 or 3 times more at companies like Meta or Amazon or Apple or Nvidia. When I started in the games industry, I used to have a mentor that taught me that like good games are built through discovery. So he always used to say, you don't really fully know what works at the start. Like you got to take the time to find it along the way. But as much as I love that statement, that only works if you can afford to learn. And AAA games are increasingly priced like it should already know the answer. which is okay if you're making the same sequel again, and you're doing minor iterations. But if you're trying to discover something new, then you have to commit early, basically, and then you have to hope it holds, because like all the learning becomes just way too expensive. And so this way of working doesn't just affect the game, it starts to reshape the humans working on it. And I've seen it, I've totally seen it, like in person, and I've been a part of that too. You know, where you have these big teams, these like deep pipelines, and these highly specialized roles. You get people who are very good at one thing. And modern AAA development is just full of specialists who, like, they might spend years focused on one narrow aspect of game development. I'm trying to think of examples.
Then they're stupid. I'm sorry, like they're stupid. You don't need to spend your entire life focusing on like a singular thing, like you're a Japanese sword artist. Like, brother, you have many spectrums, and you need to master as much as you can. Like, you can't tell me that every single minute thing needs an expert. It's stupid as hell. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, no, just be good at multiple things.
Probably like a hair artist would be the epitome of the
Hair artist?
like anyone understanding, because these are extremely talented artists that take the time to make the hair of a character strand by strand, and they set up the groom and they work with the shaders to make it look how it should in the light, and you know, they have to optimize it to work with like levels of detail so that, you know, the game can still run it. Maybe they have to set up physics, like all of these very complex things.
Does that sound to you like something you need to dedicate your entire life to? It doesn't sound like that to me. You can be like, okay, you want to be like a hair artist, whatever. Sure, you can be like a character model artist. You can do the whole thing. You don't have to do only hair. That sounds like very vague and like contrived to me.
Vegetation artists, they just specialize in just trees all day, just making trees and plants and foliages and like ecosystems. You might have like one person who, like I said, spends just 3 years making hair, and that's all they do to a high level. And then another guy who spends like,
then it's stupid and it should stop.
3 years making trees, and another guy who spends like 3 years just balancing the weapons, like trying to make those right. And then another guy spends 3 years just working on the facial rigs. Like, you get the idea. But you compare that to the PS2 era, where like the people who taught me like 3D, they came from the PS2 era, and they would often say that like I was a single artist and it was my job to one day model the characters, and then another day I'm texturing them, and another day I'm rigging it and
Good. Work, little bro. Great. Awesome. Dude, I hate this entire, oh, I'm an expert. I'm a this thing. I'm that thing. I only do that. Who cares? Go get a job. Or go flip my burgers in McDonald's. I don't care. Like, it sounds so stupid. Like, you create artificial titles for some bozo to feel good about himself. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that one bit.
animating them, and then another
I
day
could not
I'm
care less.
working on environment.
Don't hire them.
And I'm building all the doors in the game, you know, all the benches, all the park benches, I'm making all of that. I'm making the splash screen for when you start the game. Today the complexity is like so high that many of these developers, they just become like super experts in a very narrow slice of production. And that's not a diss at all. I'm not dissing any game developer that is highly specialized. I am one of
Get better.
those developers who is way too highly specialized. I got really good at making character models. That's my
It's
job.
so stupid, bro. I'm so sorry for pausing constantly at this segment, but listen. You know what it reminds me of? The Meat Bros. Do you know like the Meat Bros? You know, I'll go with that. I'll go with this step by step so you guys understand where I'm like threading here. Bald dude, long black apron, very large beard, and those black gloves. You know that meat is going to taste exactly the same at like any other cheap diner, but it's going to cost you like $100. You know that. That's exactly what it reminds me of. Like, no, dude, I'm a meat whisperer. Now, I literally, like, I tended the cows Like, what are you talking about here? Like, the meat connoisseurs, it's so cringe. It makes me want to hurl.
That's what got me
Meat
a
handler.
visa from the
Yeah.
United Kingdom to the US, because I was
Also, hello,
really good at that
Meconium.
one
Where have you
thing.
been?
I don't know how to efficiently make explosion effects for a game at all. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, don't forget the wooden interior with the metal bar stools. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
No, I could figure out, but right now I don't know how to do that. Whereas back in the day, you would have a game developer who would know all of these pieces, and he might not be amazing or she might not be great at all of those things, but they would know how to get it in the game on some level. So that's one reason why like large teams have grown from dozens of people to just like hundreds, or like maybe even like thousands when you talk about super open world games. Over time,
Of course, because you hire these idiots. You hire those self-imposing fools inside of your company. Just don't hire them. Don't hire them, and they will be required to learn something else. They would require to expand. Of course, like to expand their horizons. Just don't hire them. Problemo solved.
a lot of time working highly specialized.
It just bloat,
in
exactly.
a system that it's just that's how it is now. It just works that way, and that's just how it is. And the biggest problem you have when you have these highly specialized people who work in these extensive pipelines is often those people don't know how to build the pipeline. If you start at a big game studio, you know how to operate the machine, but you don't know how to build it. That's a different skill entirely. So if you had to make that same game from nothing, you'd be screwed. So it now means that all across the West Coast and across the US and other places too, you have like the large number of game devs who are phenomenally talented, but they were never there to build the foundations of the game pipelines that they're working on. Whereas the developers of the 90s and the 2000s would get like so many opportunities to create a pipeline. They would work on a game for a year, maybe to 18 months, and then they ship it, and then they take all those lessons, and then they start all over again. These small teams that had to be scrappy and do all these pieces. Every time they made a game from beginning to end, they would level up every aspect of development. The R&D, the pre-production,
That's actually a good point.
the iteration, blah, blah, blah. Whereas nowadays, your average developer could have been in the industry for 8 years and only worked on 2 games, and one of them.
You know what? I never thought of it. That's actually a good point, because back in the 90s, people were builders, because that didn't exist. Like the video game industry, it existed, but it was like very, very fringe. Nowadays, it's mainstream, and everyone's kind of joining an already existing company, and they don't know the foundations. I never thought of it. He actually raised a pretty great point here. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, this exact type of hiring is what created Concord. Exactly. We needed a woke artist. That's okay. His only specialization is DEI. And that's why we got that significant looking character. It was so good.
Got cancelled. And maybe both of those games were sequels of the same thing anyway. So all the pipelines were already figured out before they turned up. So they simply just don't know how to set up a game from scratch. And this spells bad news for some of the California game startups that fill themselves up with these talented but hyper-specialized senior developers. They're basically destined to have problems.
Yeah, it's basically, you know what is so funny? It's reflection of society. Because you have everyone working at Wall Street, but you have no bricklayers. You have no bricklayers, you have no woodworkers. You forgot the basics. So like, what is it worth? It will amount to nothing at the end, because this type of society is bound to collapse. And I think that's what we're seeing in the gaming industry nowadays. It's actually very, very interesting. Yeah, Eurogamer posted today, a Dragon Age Trilogy remaster probably won't happen, as no one still employee at BioWare knows how the engine works. Damn. Really? Okay, that's crazy.
Now all the publishers and the game studios are trying to make the same games but for cheaper. And they all learned, post the Bobby Kotick era, that, 400-500 person studios just aren't really viable anymore. It's just too expensive. So
It's also unnecessary. Just cut them off. I mean, how many great games were made with less than 100 people? Like, you can definitely do that today. It's just that people don't want to.
So everybody's system is shrinking. Or everybody is basically just trying to get leaner and more efficient, which is probably the right way to go.
Yep.
Which means you have smaller teams, much more ownership, and then suddenly, like, you're expected to build everything, in something like Unreal Engine, and there's like no complex structure per se in these new studios. Like, there's no safety net. There's just problems that only you now have to solve, and you don't have Mr. X expertise of this thing to turn to. You have to figure it out outside of your expertise. And a lot of those developers learned how to be very good individual contributors on one thing. Some of them became like somewhat superstars in their field and rose up in these studios, and they might leave and have a big name, and they might find a way to get $50 million startup money to make a new startup because they were a big shot guy at major studio X. And when you remove the systems of the big studio, do they actually know how to build a game from scratch? Like, probably not. It's possible that solo indie devs that ship their own game might actually know how to make a game better than someone who is at a very high level at like a major studio.
Claire Obscure Expedition 33. But to be fair, the people at the top came from Ubisoft.
Because unfortunately, the game
They knew when the ship sank.
2 decades
they went
training all of us into specialists. Then they basically turned around and asked us all to be generalists. I want to make it really clear that I'm not actually complaining at all. I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying
You should. The situation is dire and you should always blame the right people and always call out bad actors. I will. And I always have.
exactly how it is. That things are changing, and the way things used to be cannot be how they go forward. But I believe it's affecting California and the surrounding areas much more so than other places, because it gets much more complex. So while all this was happening, all these changes were happening, production is starting to get shifted elsewhere. And studios got wise to the fact they needed to bring their budgets down, and they focused more on outsourcing and moving their productions to like China, Malaysia. According to Matthew Ball's statistical analysis on the games industry,
just make it cheaper, take the cut. Make it cheaper, take the cut. Easy. Easy as 1, 2, 3.
Does one every year. Something like 90 to 95% of AAA games in the US now have their art outsourced to different companies abroad in cheaper nations. And that's just...
And soon it will all be AI.
To keep the cost to a level where the game can still be profitable. And at first, these guys, they were fantastic support to the core team.
Profitable for who? That's the major question.
But over time, those teams abroad that learn the systems, they learn the standards, the pipelines, we stopped calling them outsourcers. They're not outsourcers anymore, they're code developers, because they're taking more and more of the work. They're not just making art pieces, they're helping with design, they're helping with code, they're helping with functionally maybe sometimes more of the game than the people in the West are, despite the fact that it ships with the name of the game studio in the West on the box. So now California and all of these other surrounding areas are carrying the core group of controllers, the controlling game devs, and then the other regions across the world are mastering the actual production of making the game. And it's just the Chinese manufacturing boom all over again. American companies are slowly forgetting how to make things because they spent decades getting China to do it for them for cheaper and more efficiently.
And that's why you're seeing Chinese gaming on the rise while every other Western game is a flop. China is absolutely conquering the market with games like Marvel Rivals and which one the other one, Black Myth Wukong, all of that, and we see every single Western game slops, just slops, literally. just fails and crumbles and burns to ashes because they don't know how to make good games anymore. They've completely lost the plot. So I 100% agree here. Yeah, a game that sells well, the CEO gets a raise and the employee gets laid off. Classic. Exactly. And you just brought up a really good point of whenever a game is being, unsuccessful, a lot of people get fired. Whenever a game is successful, a lot of people get fired. So what's the difference, right? Like, nothing really makes sense. Again, it's all due to corporate greed. I'm surprised he didn't really speak about that. That's pretty much the crux of the issue.
And California kept the risk because the price just got higher and higher. They
It's
never
just like corporate
addressed
greed.
the fact that salaries kept rising. They never addressed the fact that the cost of living was getting ridiculous. And everyone else across the world was learning the process, getting more efficient, and now are reaping the benefits of that. Okay, so now you've got this expensive game, lock decisions, no room to learn, yet we're seeing smaller teams are winning. Take Expedition 33.
Of
for
course.
example. You know, around 30 developers, they used Unreal Engine, lean pipe.
They're not 30 developers. They're way, way more. It's like, it's around 100, I think. Like, the 30 developer thing, it's a myth. It's, like, it's not real. They have way more than that.
Pipeline,
Just to be fair.
some outsourcing, but the part that matters is that they weren't just building the game. They were learning how to make the game while making it. The CEO has even talked about this. He says that parts of the team were literally learning workflows from YouTube videos during development. Think about that. You're making the game and learning how to make the game. On a $200 million project, or anything that's happening on this side of the planet, you know, where we're not in Montpellier, France, where the prices haven't exploded out of control yet, that just can't happen. You cannot afford it. But here, that was the process. Learning, trying, figuring it out in real time. That used to be how video games were made. And if you look at them now, like the result, they didn't just ship the game, they won. They won all the awards.
And they shipped it not for 60 bucks. I think it was $45. So yeah. Not only they gave you the best experience imaginable in video games like history, they also did it for cheap. Crazy. And Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is a game that I would have easily paid full AAA price for. Easily. No questions about it. And by the way, I was the only person on this planet excited for this game. I even have a trailer. I even have like a video of me reacting to the trailer. When nobody spoke about this game, I knew it was going to be goated, and I was right. And I'm so glad that I was, because this game deserved every single bit of attention it had. It's insane. It's absolutely crazy, and I'm glad that it completely re-innovated the market, because people thought that turn-based games were dead, but no, they just needed a facelift. Because now we're seeing action combat being mixed with damn, am I stupid? Like, literally with turn-based games. Sorry, I don't know. My WoW brain lagged there for a moment. So, and we're seeing more and more of it. And next week, we're about to play Beast of Reincarnation. Exactly this type of game. Souls-like game that is turn-based. So it's also re-innovating the genre. So we're seeing Expedition 33 kind of open the door for many other companies. And that's really cool. Even though Beast of Reincarnation was in production like before that. But, you know what I'm saying. Like, all of these video games are actually trailblazers. And I love that. I'm here for it. Yeah, Expedition 33, it's not indie, it's AA. Yeah, like a lot of people call it indie, and I've fallen into that trope myself. Like, yeah, it's AA. That is true, but it's a very small company filled with, like, starting engineers and developers. They were all junior levels. Like, 80% of them were juniors. That's extremely impressive. Extremely impressive, considering the fact that you had all of them big AAA companies pouring hundreds of millions on games with the best people in charge, and all we got is trash. Right? Yet not only it re-innovated, they opened everyone's eyes about passionate game design. True. Yeah, good example, Godzilla Minus One was made for measly, $14 million, because it made under Japan economy. Yep, that's also true. You're right. Yeah, small company. Just like Blizzard, small indie company. Maybe Blizzard one day would make a good game. I really just root for them, because I know they need the money. I know they need the funding. They should release another, like, gay plushie.
So this isn't
Or maybe another
about
long boy.
institutional knowledge or talent or intelligence. And it's not even about experience. The people making AAA games today are some of the most skilled developers that the industry has ever produced. This is not an indictment on California devs being weak or not what they used to be. That's not what I'm saying. The problem is the environment they're operating in when every developer costs a fortune to employ because they just need a living wage in a place that has like lost control and capitalism has run rife. When every month of production burns tens of millions and every decision has investors or executives or, you know, forecasts attached to it, all your learning just becomes a complete luxury. Complete luxury. Games are built through learning. Some of the best games in history weren't discovered because someone knew the answer on day one. That was just not how it was. Like, they were discovered because teams had room to find the answer. That is
League of Legends and Dota 2. Absolutely. Started as a Warcraft 3 mod, and the only reason it made it up to the air is because Blizzard were kind enough at the time to give people like free access to the source material. And they've let their community create something. A lot of people just did shenanigans, and most of it was like hot garbage. But the thing that rose to the top, they were insanely goated. And that's how you get great games. Trial and error. Over and over and over again.
becoming harder and harder to do in California. Yeah, I've got advice for maybe only young developers. I wouldn't optimize for prestige. Yes, you need a professional portfolio that looks extremely good, but if you want to have longevity in this industry, I'd optimize for learning. Be somewhere where you can learn. Go somewhere where you can wear multiple hats. Go somewhere where you can ship, not just stuck 10 years on one title. Go somewhere where you can make mistakes if you can.
Yeah. Don't work on Star Citizen.
Go somewhere where you can see the entire process of making a game from beginning to end. You will become more useful as these teams get smaller. The developers who thrive over the next decade, I don't know. I don't necessarily think they're going to be ultimate specialists who, you know, spent 10 years pulling a single lever in the giant machine. It will be the people who know how to build the machine. Yeah, I guess.
I think, yeah, by the way, great video. I'm gonna link you guys this video. Seems to be the end of it. At this point, he's just like giving advice to young developers, which is a great advice, by the way. I think what he's saying here is just learn how to make your own games. And I think that nowadays, you can do it way easier than like you could have back in the day because you have access to all of these tools. You have a lot of single games made by like single developers like Balatro, and I forgot how this fighting game called. It was really, really cool. He's still working on it. One day I'll feature it on the channel. It's just very, very cool. And just, it's amazing. It's amazing to see what people can do. You have Vampire Survivors as well, right? So like one person can make a difference. It is possible in today's age. We have access to all the information. We have all of the tools. We just need to be willing to learn them. That's the difference. It just, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, also note how small people begin to scare the big boys in cinemas and theaters like Markiplier, The Backrooms, and especially with that Obsession movie. I'm all in for it. You're 100% right. And now we're seeing like the natural cycle of life. You got the people who made the stuff. It was hard times. They became big. They became corporate, greed took them over, and now they started to make slop, and then the little guys at the top are conquering them. And those little guys, make no mistake, they will be corrupt. That's how it works. That's how the cookie crumbles. And the cycle will repeat anew. That's just how humans work, unfortunately. But that rule doesn't apply to like Valve and GGG, because I don't know, Path of Exile kind of curing them of every single thing. It absolves them of all sin. It's the greatest game out there.